sit for a moment and be honest with yourself. How many times have you allowed someone to cross your boundaries, not because you didn't see it, but because you didn't value yourself enough to stop it? Self-respect does not begin when someone finally appreciates you, and it does not appear when the world starts treating you better. It begins in the quiet space within you, long before anyone notices. It is shaped by the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening, by the choices you make when no one is watching, and by the standards you are willing to uphold, even when it feels uncomfortable. Many people believe respect comes from external validation, from praise, attention, or approval. But this is an illusion that keeps you dependent and uncertain. Because if your sense of worth depends on others, it will rise and fall with their opinions, and you will constantly feel unstable. The truth is, people respond to what you silently communicate about yourself, not just through your words, but through your behavior, your boundaries, your energy. When you constantly doubt yourself, when you accept less than you deserve, when you ignore your own needs just to keep others comfortable, you are sending a message. You are teaching the world how to treat you without saying a single word. And over time, this message becomes your reality. Not because people are cruel by nature, but because they follow the standard you have set. If you do not take your own time seriously, others will waste it. If you do not honor your own feelings, others will dismiss them. If you do not stand up for yourself, others will step over you without hesitation. This is not punishment, it is reflection. The outer world reflects your inner state with surprising accuracy. And once you begin to see this, you realize that waiting for others to change is a distraction. The real work has always been within you. Self-respect requires awareness. It asks you to notice the small moments where you abandon yourself, the times you say yes when your whole being wants to say no, the times you stay silent even though something inside you feels wrong, the times you tolerate behavior that slowly drains your energy. These moments may seem insignificant, but they accumulate. They shape your identity. They define the way others perceive you. To respect yourself means to take responsibility for these choices. It means to pause and ask yourself, is this aligned with my value? And to act accordingly, even when it feels difficult. It is not about becoming rigid or distant, but about becoming honest. Honest with what you feel, what you need, and what you are no longer willing to accept. This honesty creates a quiet strength, a presence that does not need to demand respect, because it naturally commands it. And as this inner shift happens, your external experiences begin to change. not because you forced anything, but because you are no longer available for what diminishes you. You stop attracting situations that rely on your self-doubt, and you begin to align with what reflects your self-worth. This is how respect truly works. It is not chased, it is mirrored. Boundaries are not walls you build to keep the world out. They are lines you draw to remain connected to yourself. Without them, you begin to lose your shape. You start bending to meet every expectation, stretching to satisfy every demand until you no longer recognize where you end and others begin. This is how exhaustion quietly takes over, not from doing too much, but from allowing too much. Saying no is one of the simplest expressions of self-respect, yet it feels the most difficult, not because the word itself is hard, but because of what it brings up inside you. Fear of disappointing others, fear of being misunderstood, fear of losing approval, connection, or acceptance. So instead of saying no, you hesitate. You soften your truth. You say yes, while something inside you resists. And in that moment, you create a silent conflict within yourself. Outwardly, you agree. Inwardly, you withdraw. Every time this happens, your energy becomes divided. A part of you moves forward to fulfill what you agreed to, while another part stays behind, carrying frustration, resentment, or quiet regret. Over time, this inner division weakens your sense of clarity. You begin to feel overwhelmed, not because life is too demanding, but because you are no longer choosing what enters your life with awareness. Boundaries restore that awareness. They require you to pause before responding, to check in with yourself before committing your time, your attention, your presence. They invite you to notice how something truly feels beyond the pressure to please or the habit of compliance. This pause may seem small, but it is powerful. It shifts you from reacting automatically to responding intentionally. When you say no with clarity, you are not rejecting another person. You are affirming your own limits. You are acknowledging that your time and energy are finite and that they deserve to be used with care. This does not make you selfish. It makes you responsible. Because without limits, even your kindness loses its meaning. It becomes something that can be taken without consideration. Something that no longer carries intention. There will be moments when others do not understand your boundaries. Some may question them, some may resist them, and some may even try to make you feel guilty for having them. This is where your practice deepens, not in the act of saying no, but in staying grounded after you have said it, in allowing others to have their reactions without letting those reactions pull you back into old patterns. Clarity in your boundaries creates a different kind of presence, You become someone who does not need to explain excessively or justify every decision. Your words become simple, direct, and calm. And through that calmness, others begin to sense that your limits are not negotiable through pressure or persuasion. As you continue to honor your boundaries, something shifts within you. The guilt begins to fade. The hesitation becomes quieter. And in its place, a steady sense of self-trust begins to grow. You start to feel aligned with your choices rather than conflicted by them. And this alignment changes the way others engage with you because they can no longer rely on your silence or your reluctance to speak your truth. The need for validation often begins quietly. It does not announce itself as weakness. It disguises itself as connection, as belonging, as the desire to be seen and accepted. You tell yourself that it is natural to want approval, that it is human to seek recognition. And in a way, it is. But when this need becomes the foundation of your self-worth, it begins to control you in subtle ways. You start measuring your value through the reactions of others. A compliment lifts you. A criticism unsettles you. Silence makes you question yourself. You become dependent on external signals to feel stable, and without realizing it, you give away your inner authority. Your mood, your confidence, even your decisions begin to shift based on how others respond to you. This is where you lose your center. Because when you rely on validation, you are no longer acting from truth. You are adjusting yourself to fit expectations. You say what is more likely to be accepted. You do what avoids rejection. You shape your identity around what is rewarded, not around what is real. And over time, this creates a quiet distance between who you are and who you present to the world. That distance becomes exhausting to maintain. You begin to feel that something is missing, even when everything appears fine on the surface. You may receive praise, attention, even admiration, but it does not fully satisfy you. Because deep down, you know that what is being validated is not entirely authentic. It is a version of you that has been carefully adjusted to meet external standards. Breaking free from this pattern requires awareness and honesty. You must begin to notice the moments when you seek approval before you act, the hesitation before you speak, the urge to check how something will be received instead of asking whether it is true for you. These moments are small, but they reveal how deeply the need for validation has shaped your behavior. To let go of this need does not mean you stop caring about others or become indifferent to feedback. It means you no longer depend on it to define your worth. You begin to shift your focus inward. Instead of asking, "Do they approve of me?" You ask, is this aligned with who I am? This question changes everything. It brings you back to yourself. As you practice this, there will be discomfort. You may feel exposed without the protection of approval. You may worry about how others perceive you. But if you stay with this discomfort, you begin to discover something deeper than validation. You discover self-trust. Self-trust is quiet. It does not need constant reassurance. It allows you to stand by your choices even when they are not understood. It gives you the strength to accept that not everyone will agree with you and that this is not a problem to solve. It is simply part of being real. And when you begin to live from this place, your presence changes. You are no longer trying to be accepted. You are simply expressing what is true. This creates a different kind of connection, one that is not based on approval, but on authenticity. Disrespect rarely begins as something obvious. It often appears in small, almost unnoticeable ways. A comment that feels slightly off, a tone that carries a hint of dismissal, a moment where your presence is overlooked. At first, you may question it. You may tell yourself that it is not a big deal, that you are overthinking, that it is better to stay quiet and keep the peace. And in doing so, you allow the moment to pass without acknowledgement. But what you ignore does not disappear. It sets a precedent. When disrespect is tolerated, even in its smallest form, it creates permission for more of the same. Not because people are intentionally trying to harm you, but because human behavior follows patterns. When there is no resistance, no boundary, no clear response, the behavior continues. It becomes normalized. What once felt uncomfortable slowly becomes something you expect, something you adjust to, something you silently carry. Kindness, in its true form, is rooted in strength. It comes from a place of choice, of awareness, of inner stability. But when kindness is disconnected from self-respect, it begins to transform into something else. It becomes compliance. It becomes avoidance. It becomes a way of maintaining harmony at the cost of your own dignity. This is where confusion arises. You may believe you are being patient, understanding, or forgiving. But beneath that, there may be an unwillingness to confront discomfort, an unwillingness to speak when something feels wrong, an unwillingness to risk disapproval by standing firm. And over time, this unwillingness shapes how others interact with you. They begin to sense, consciously or unconsciously, that your limits are flexible, that your silence can be relied upon, that your tolerance has no clear edge. And so the behavior continues. Resentment often grows in these conditions. Not suddenly, but gradually. It builds with every moment you choose to remain silent, while something within you feels unsettled. You may not express it outwardly, but internally it accumulates. It creates tension, distance, and a quiet sense of being undervalued. And yet, the pattern remains unchanged because the external situations is only reflecting what has been allowed internally. To interrupt this pattern, awareness must be followed by action, not aggressive action, not reactive emotion, but clear and grounded response. It may be as simple as addressing a comment in the moment or choosing not to engage in behavior that feels diminishing. It may be stepping back from situations where your presence is not respected, or calmly expressing what you will no longer accept. These actions do not require confrontation in the way it is often imagined. They require clarity, a clarity that is not driven by anger, but by self-respect. When this clarity is present, your response carries a different energy. It is not about proving a point or winning an argument. It is about maintaining alignment with your own values. Over time, this alignment reshapes your environment. People begin to recognize that certain behaviors are no longer acceptable in your presence, not because you demanded it forcefully, but because you demonstrated it consistently. And those who cannot meet that standard naturally fall away, making space for interactions that reflect a different level of respect. Clarity is often misunderstood as something complex, something that requires long explanations or perfect reasoning. But true clarity is simple. It is the quiet knowing within you that does not argue, does not rush, and does not seek approval before it stands. It is the ability to see a situation as it is, without distorting it to fit your fears or your attachments. Without clarity, your decisions become uncertain. You hesitate, you overthink, you move back and forth between what you feel and what you think you should feel. In this state, your energy becomes scattered. You say yes, then regret it. You stay, then question it. You leave, then doubt it. There is no stability because your choices are not rooted in a clear understanding of what truly matters to you. Clarity begins when you are willing to be honest with yourself. Not selectively honest, not only when it feels comfortable, but fully honest. You look at your situation without excuses. You recognize what drains you, what diminishes you, what no longer aligns with your values. And at the same time, you acknowledge what strengthens you, what supports your growth, what feels true even when it is difficult. This honesty cuts through confusion. It removes the need to constantly analyze every detail because you begin to trust your perception. You no longer need endless opinions from others to decide what is right for you. You can listen, you can consider, but you are not dependent. There is a center within you that remains steady, even when external voices are loud. From this place, your actions become more decisive, not impulsive, but intentional. When something feels misaligned, you recognize it sooner. When a situation no longer respects your boundaries, you do not wait for it to worsen before responding. You act with a calm certainty that does not require justification. Knowing when to stay and when to leave is one of the clearest expressions of this inner power. Staying is not always weakness, and leaving is not always strength. What matters is the reason behind the choice. If you stay out of fear, out of attachment, out of the inability to face change, then your presence becomes heavy. You endure rather than engage. But if you stay with awareness, because there is still value, growth, or meaning, then your presence remains grounded and intentional. In the same way, leaving is not about escape. It is about alignment. It is recognizing that something no longer supports who you are becoming and having the courage to step away without needing conflict or closure from others. This kind of decision often feels quiet on the outside, but internally it is powerful. It reflects a deep respect for your own path. As clarity strengthens, your presence changes in subtle ways. You speak less, but with more intention. You explain less because you no longer feel the need to convince others. You move with a sense of direction that others can feel, even if they cannot fully understand it. And through this, your life begins to reflect a different level of order, one that is not forced, but naturally created through alignment with what is true for you. And in the end, it was never about changing the world around you. It was about remembering who you are before the world told you who to be. Because the moment you choose yourself without hesitation, the moment you stand in your truth without fear, the moment you stop negotiating your worth for temporary acceptance, everything begins to shift. Not loudly, not instantly, but deeply. You no longer chase respect. You become it. You no longer beg to be valued. You walk as someone who already knows their value, and those who cannot meet you at that level will quietly fall away, not as a loss, as a necessary release. So stand firm in your silence, be clear in your presence, and let your actions speak what your words no longer need to explain. Because when you truly respect yourself, you don't just change how others treat you. You change what you are willing to accept.